Hoops through life. Hoops through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss everything related to women's basketball player development, the collegiate recruiting process, and transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. Our guest today is Dr. Zanthia Reddish, aka Dr. Z, or the Ball Mom Doc. She is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and certified transition life coach who is the founder and CEO of Impoweredd Educational Consulting. As a former school principal, AAU administrator, and an NBA mom, Dr. Z has coined a radiologist because she and her husband provide transition life coaching to help other athlete parents get their athletes ready to crush it at the next level. Dr. Z has coached families through navigating transitions from amateur to pro status in a variety of sports using the vast knowledge she garnered from working with countless basketball families over the years. Dr. Z specializes in supporting parents of 5th through 8th grade basketball players in navigating their baller sport and school programs to meet their goals and earn scholarships through personalized transition coaching and individualized prescriptive student-athlete success plans. Dr. Z is the best-selling author of Alley-Oop, the ultimate assist for parents of athletes, and has earned 5 degrees, including a doctorate of education and a certificate in athlete management. She resides in Atlanta and assists athlete families all across the nation. Dr. Z, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, of course. So let's start with this. Who is Dr. Z, or the Ball Mom Doc? How did you get into the work you're doing today?
Dr. Z is, I am an educator by trade. Okay. So my background is education, all things education, love to teach, because I love to learn. So I love to pass the knowledge that I have on to others. And I happen to also be married to my best friend, Bob, and I have 2 amazing sons who happen to also play basketball. And so over the years, working and supporting them in their work around basketball, I did not play basketball in college or anything like that. Now, what I will tell you is we've met in person, so I am 6 feet tall. I'm pretty tall, and I'm an identical twin. So a lot of people actually have expected us to play basketball, which is why we didn't play basketball, because when we were young and in middle school, we were kind of like normal. And then everyone else kind of maybe stopped growing and we kept growing or something, because by the time we got to high school, we were huge compared to our friends. And everyone was always calling us the Twin Towers. They were like, oh, you guys are going to hoop, all this stuff. So it was like so much pressure because we didn't actually know how to play basketball, even though we were so tall. So we were actually too afraid to learn because we were thinking that everyone was going to expect us to be better than we would be. So lesson, everybody, don't let things like that stop you from pursuing something, because who knows, I might have been an amazing basketball player, but nevertheless, I ended up going on, meeting my husband later on, and we married, and we had these 2 amazing sons who happened to be very tall. My husband's 6'7", both boys, the older one, Cameron, who plays in the NBA, he's 6'8", and my younger one, who's playing Division I ball at University of Albany, is 6'7". So even though I did not become a baller, I married a baller and I had 2 ballers. And that is why I am the Ball Mom Doc. So I am obviously a basketball mom, but I also am a doctor of education. And I would use my knowledge that I've learned over the years, not just as a school principal, but also in basketball, because I was fortunate enough to run kind of help with the administration of my son's AAU programs. So my husband was coaching and I was doing the administration. And we were very fortunate in that our older son got noticed very early and was a projected lottery pick while he was in high school. And so I became the Ball Mom Doc because I would also take the information that I learned from him and our journey as well as my younger sons, and I would help other families along their way. So I became known as the doc. Go see the ball mom doc. She'll know. She'll help you guys. So that's what I do.
Yeah, and you mentioned we met in person and we did, and I have to say this too, just the amount of love I know that it just radiates off of you for your family
Oh,
and your sons is pretty infectious. So they're very lucky to have you, and especially
oh,
with your background in education, I'm sure that really helped them set themselves up for success because it wasn't maybe you didn't have the basketball knowledge, but you had a lot of the logistical knowledge. And sometimes I think that's a lot of what's missing as you go and learn about, kids who might want to play in college or beyond. What typically, oh, actually, I do want to go back because you said you didn't play sports in high school. What did you do
well,
then? Did you play any sports or just not basketball?
okay, because I was going to clear that up.
Yeah.
So let's be clear. I didn't play basketball, but I did earn my varsity letter. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So I was actually a cheerleader. Like my twin sister and I were cheerleaders in middle school, and then we transitioned into high school. And there were twin football players on the football team as well as on the basketball team. And so everyone thought it would be so cool if there were also twins on the cheerleading squad. So we did what we do. We tried out and we ended up cheering. Now, we later left cheerleading and pursued and track and field. So I ran for probably a half of a year. Because listen, here's the other thing. Parents and athletes, you need to know what your gifts are. Okay. I was not the athlete I aspired to be. My best friend, however, she could really run. And so I always was going to be at practice supporting her. But I decided to start really, really early as, again, tapping into my own gifts as the manager. I was doing the I know I had to stop laughing, but it's true. So I was the track manager. And so I did earn my varsity letter for track and field in high school. So
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yes, self-awareness is definitely key. And
definitely,
yeah, I mean, and it seems like that's the theme, right? You helped manage that track team, you helped manage the AAU team because there's a lot of logistical things. I mean, when I played AAU, my mom helped out the coach with all of those logistics, and they would say that was his basketball wife and that was her basketball husband.
I love
And
it.
it's yeah, because there's just it's so much work, and if your brain isn't for logistics and schedules and all of that, it's just going to be a hot mess. So
Absolutely. It takes
much
a village.
much needed skill set for sure. So let's talk about Empowered a little bit. What typically prompts families to seek out your services?
So we started Empowered back in 2018 when our oldest Cam was still in high school. And that was his senior year. And I was already thinking about what I was going to do next, how I was going to transition from being a principal at the school level to working with families. And so at that time, when he was in high school, I was able to bring parents in and we would do what we call pep talks, parents empowering parent talks. We still have them today, where we go in and we'll meet with AAU teams or go to schools and do assemblies or go to tournaments, et cetera. And we would make sure we were going over information for readiness for college, NCAA and all those kinds of things. That's our pep talks now include nil information and all kinds of things, which is how we met as we were talking about nil. So but at that time, it was really convenient because Cameron was still in school. His schedule was a lot more flexible. I actually would oftentimes give pep talks right at his school. I would invite other schools to his school because they gave me a room that I would be able to utilize with parents and everything. So it was everything just kind of fell into place. I also had my own school as a school principal. I could bring groups to that school as well. There was in two different parts of the area. And I would work with the parents while Cameron was actually working with the kids. So it was a win-win. And then we would all come back together and have a good conversation. And so Empowered is really a resource for parents. I really wanted it to be a place where you could get information and then also connect with other families so that you could get through your journey. I made Empowered to be answers to problems that we had as parents. So we had, even though I didn't play, my husband did play college basketball. He went to VCU. And again, I shared with you that he coached. But the landscape had changed. Even the AAU landscape had changed by the time, my boys were matriculating through. And so we were blessed enough to be there along the way, the entire way. I was behind the scenes. Bob was like right there coaching, et cetera. We're getting tons of information. But I noticed a lot of families don't get that information. If you're not, Cameron was a top 10 player since he was in sixth grade. So I had all the sneaker companies, all the schools, all kinds of things, got his first offer in eighth grade. Like he was really along that trajectory. I started just collecting all the information. And when he got older and he was a projected lottery pick, I still didn't have somebody I could call and say, girl, what do you do about X, Y, or Z? Or they're saying such and such, he's, it's his intangibles. I'm thinking, well, what is that? Like I don't even know what they're talking about. So I wanted to provide that resource for parents because there are questions all along the way. And so I became the answer to the problems. So Empowered actually does transition life coaching for parents of athletes, but I also continued the work as the business has grown now. And here in this year, we're working with schools where I also help new and novice principals. And I'm also working with women who are going through life transitions. And that came out of me working with basketball moms who were like me, going through seasons where they maybe they're empty nesters now and they had to learn to navigate that space, or they were having relationship issues and all those kinds of things. So the business has really grown, but my main baby has always been supporting the parents of athletes like me.
Yeah, so your target is fifth through eighth grade, right?
It is
That's kind
now.
of the age group. Yeah, now it is. So what types of conversations are you having at that age with parents? Are they all, I guess, do they all know that their child is maybe really gifted like your son was, or do they just want a little bit more guidance on how to navigate or get themselves prepared for middle school and high school basketball? What does that look like?
I would say most of my clients are definitely on the latter in terms of their child likes their sport. That's where they are. Their child really likes their sport and they want to help their children meet their potential in that sport. And they don't necessarily know. And actually, if I'm honest, who does really know in fifth grade?
I'm
I'm
with
just
you.
saying.
I'm with
I'm
you.
just saying. Okay. I mean, if someone's telling you it's a for sure, they're not being honest because I know many people who were playing with my sons, even on the elite teams, even in sixth grade, that didn't even play basketball in high school, let alone college, et cetera. But I do also have several of his teammates that also play in the NBA alongside him. So it just depends. So no, I would not say that the majority of my families that I work with are not necessarily in the 1%, I would say. They're trying to figure out where they are. So at fifth grade, they know their children have an affinity toward a sport. In particular, I've always worked with basketball, but the business grew to cover other sports as well, because a lot of the information that I'm sharing, especially when I do a pep talk, is generalizable information. It goes across sport. So I could talk to all those kind of things. Now, basketball is always my jam. I do work with other sports as well, but basketball is my jam because that's what we do. But what was happening was, especially, I would say, especially during COVID, most of my clients were juniors and seniors, parents of juniors and seniors who were looking for opportunities for their children because they had no prospects for a variety of reasons, COVID and the like. And so they would reach out and they wanted help getting their child a scholarship. That's what it came down to. And so I would find that I needed to do so much work to get them in position to go to college. And for some of them, it wasn't even a possibility because of their academic standing, et cetera. So I would have to do all kinds of things. Now, what I will share with you is I have a 100% success rate. Everybody went somewhere. Okay. It just may not have been, that you came to me thinking your child was a D1 athlete with no opportunities, and your child left either going to a D2 or a D3 program, or even maybe they weren't in academic standing and I've gotten them in a JUCO or whatever. So part of it, the reason why I moved back to fifth grade is because, one, I focus on transitions. What makes Impoweredd different from any other company in the country that does anything around recruitment, et cetera, is, well, it's me. Okay, I make the difference. Okay, it's the ball mom talk. Okay, and then what I mean specifically around that is my experience, not just as the mom of a basketball player, but as a school principal, is what sets me apart, because I am helping parents position their children academically and on the sports front. I'm going back, I'm looking at transcripts, I'm doing all kinds of things. I'm talking to guidance counselors, principals, et cetera, as their colleague, not as something else. So that kind of separates me from other constituents that may be in this line of business. I know how to, again, there's systems, there's school systems, and these are sports systems. So I'm helping them navigate them. A lot of times parents don't even know that they're in a system, let alone that you've got to take this route or that there's even an alternative to another route, et cetera. So it's about helping them with that. So I start in fifth grade because of the transition from fifth into sixth, because I know how important your fourth grade math is to determining where you're going to be in 10th grade, that maybe the average person doesn't know. So I'm having conversations about that so I can position you in your classes in sixth grade, so that by the time we're in 10th and 11th grade and we say we want to go play D1 somewhere in whatever sport, we're actually in position to be able to do so. So fifth grade into sixth, then I also look at eighth into ninth. Then we also work with high school students who are trying to get into college or to one of the alternative programs, the OTE, they used to have Ignite, those kinds of things. So we're looking at all of the possibilities. And again, as a transition life coach, I'm getting you ready. I'm the world's only radiologist. I'm getting parents ready to get their kids in position to be successful at the next level.
Yeah, I don't want to go too into the weeds here, but I am interested because of something you said about, fourth grade math into 10th grade. And so with those systems that you're talking about, can you just speak a little bit more about that transition, what you're talking about from the student to the parent perspective as well?
So what we do at Impoweredd is actually pretty comprehensive. We look at both sides. It's a balance of the two. A lot of times when you're looking at recruitment, some programs will look specifically around the academics, others will look specifically around the sport. We do both. And so we're looking at their academic and athletic aptitude based on a series of criteria, and we're assessing it. We get our athletes assessed from their athletic standpoint, and then again, I am doing an entire inventory of their studies as well, and making a plan, a specific plan it's literally like an IEP, but which an IEP is an individualized education plan for a student who needs special education services. So these are services that we will provide for athletes. So we do an individualized student athlete success plan. So it's almost the same thing that tells you exactly, here's what we need to do. We create the goals, and then we help families to meet them by connecting them with resources in their area to be able to get there. So that by the time they go from fifth grade into sixth grade, and maybe they need, I don't know, to work with this particular trainer or a psychologist or whatever need be. We have it all. We have relationships with all those folks, or we form them and we vet them. So we are a resource that, again, like there's just no one else like us that does the work we do, because it is the balance of both. You have to have both. And the challenge I was running into with those 11th and 12th graders is they may have been really, really gifted in one area, usually their sport, but did not have the credits that they needed. to be able to pursue an opportunity at a particular level. So getting out in front rather than coming from behind in 11th or 12th grade trying to catch you up is a lot better. So if parents have the ability, it's best to learn early, get the information early so that you can position your children. I wrote the book, Alley-Oop, The Ultimate Assist for Parents of Athletes. And I already told you, I didn't even play basketball. Now you won't be able to tell because I'm going to walk in the gym. I'm going to look the part. Okay. But, and I know what I'm talking about because I've been in the gym for hundreds and hundreds of hours. I'm a rat. But this book, Alley-Oop, is actually less about basketball. I mean, it definitely talks about our journey, but it's talking about the strategic decisions that parents have to make to position your children to be able to meet their goals, whatever they are. For my children, it was basketball. For someone else's child, it may be, I don't know, an instrument. It may be anything, art. It could be, I mean, it could be anything. But, for the sake of this podcast, obviously we're talking about athletes. But again, it's about learning that your child has an opportunity. They love the game. That in of itself is a great start because we need that. We need that passion and interest in the game. But what else do we need to make sure that my child is in position and that I, as a parent, place my child in places where they can reach their next goal? That is what we assist with on both the academic and the athletic sides.
Yeah, and I think even because you said before how some of the students or the athletes on your son's team in sixth grade weren't even playing in high school or whatever. But even if they had that support early on, it would still serve them even without their sport, right? Because then at least, academically, there's still a plan and a path for you to go to college or go to a trade school or go to there's a plan for you beyond just thinking about, okay, what are we doing right now in this moment? And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I wonder what is that guide, and it's probably individualized because it sounds very individualized for you all, but what is that maybe guidepost that you're thinking of in fifth or sixth grade to set them up for high school? Is it more so geared towards what the NCAA academic requirements are in that moment, or how do you balance that versus what the student and parent are asking for?
So the biggest thing that we give them is actually information. But beyond that, because we live in an information age, you can get information anywhere, everything, AI, all the NCAA stuff is all on the website. No, not so I'm not giving you anything that's like magic. The magic actually happens in the implementation. It's the application of the actual information where that sets folks apart. So it's actually both to answer your question. I'm looking at where your child is right now, academically and athletically, so that we can determine possibly the extent, the highest extent. Even in fifth grade, we're thinking about that they can go. And the reason why I say that is because for my son, that's where it started. For actually both boys, for Cameron, as a fifth grader, he was playing football, not basketball. He was playing football. That's what he got recruited for, into private school in fifth grade. And we had to make some decisions as a family, like, well, I don't know, this looks like a whole college campus to me. I don't know that I'm ready for my child to do that. And so we had to make some decisions, as do families. We would, as if you were a part of Impoweredd, if you were working with us, we would be helping you make those kinds of decisions if you had those kinds of opportunities. But maybe that's not your child's situation. Maybe your child struggles academically. Maybe your child has some behavioral issues. Maybe your child is in a special education program. We've gone and been an advocate at special education meetings. We've done, I'm trying to tell you, it's a secret sauce. I don't know. I'm the radiologist. It's just there. But I say all this to say that it also matters to start thinking about where your child can go. One of the biggest challenges that I think coaches have and families have as they're going along this journey is managing the expectations of parents. You hear from someone that your kid has it, whatever it is, and you want to make sure that they get everything they're entitled to because they have it. Well, let's talk about what that actually is. And does the child have enough interest and passion to get it? even if you said that it's a possibility for them. A lot of times we are helping families to really peel back the layers. Is this your dream or your child's dream? Those kinds of things. And it makes a difference because at the end of the day, the child has to do the work in the classroom and on the court. And so I'm looking, yes, I'm thinking about what they have to do, what courses they're going to have to take. And we're starting the actual recruitment process. We're starting to set you up for your clearinghouse information in seventh grade. So by the time you're in ninth grade, yeah, everything's already flowing and going. But if I don't meet you until eighth grade, again, I'm going to go back and look at things, et cetera. So I meet you where you are and take you where you need to go, just as I did as a school principal for 20 years.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, and the point I want to highlight is about the decisions and the fact that we live in an information age. And what I try to get across when I talk to people is if you type in a question into Google and the answer is anything but a factual answer, if it's an it depends answer, then you really should be looking more inward than outward, right? Because it's a opinion-based question,
Absolutely.
and it depends. So the answers that you'll see online are probably most likely not your exact situation with the exact criteria. And I think that's where somebody like you benefits or can benefit them, I'm sorry, because you can peel back those layers and you can say, well, what's your actual goal here? What resources do you have? What do you need? What do they like? And then you can more reflectively think about what the proper decision will be instead of just trying to Google something. And well, this person said that the private school was great, and maybe they're on the other side of the country and their kid is very different than yours. So I wanted to highlight that because that's, like you said, where the magic is. I think that's where the magic is. Understand having somebody who can point you in the right direction to think about different things as you make decisions.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
everything. And the athlete is part of the process. So it's, a lot of times you're either talking to one or the other. Either you have all the information you can from the athlete, or you have all the information you can from the parent. But absent them in the same space where they're both hearing what the other one is saying or thinking, et cetera, it makes a huge difference. A lot of times we find that in those conversations with the athlete and their family, my husband, Coach Bob, and I can say something, and it may have been the very same thing that the parents had said at some point. But all of a sudden, bing, they get it. It clicks. Like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do because this is what Cam did, or whatever, like whatever the case is. So I think it's also helpful that we're an extra voice, we're an extension of the family. And I even think of that even when I'm talking with coaches and I'm talking with schools. I'm able to come from a different lens because no one really wants to be, and no one really actually wants to be bothered with that parent that is going to be complaining or questioning or whatever. I'm not coming from that angle. Typically, my position, again, like I said, when I'm talking to schools, I'm talking to colleagues. As as a fellow principal, if I'm talking to a coach, Coach Bob is heading that conversation as a fellow coach, those kinds of things. So, and then just because of the pure, the blessing that we have in that everyone knows the name Reddish. It's crazy. If I call anyone, I'm Dr. Reddish, they take our calls. So I'm able to then use my connections even to help your child meet their goals that you may not otherwise, opening in the door that you may not otherwise have been able to tug on at all.
That's huge too, because if you know where, even if you don't have the information, if you know where it is and you can actually get it, that's super valuable as well. So what are some of the most common questions you get from athletes and their families?
Well, one, they want to know, can I guarantee that they'll get a scholarship? That's a huge one, especially, if you're coming in fifth grade, you're like, I mean, if I'm going to make this investment, I just need to know my child's going to get a scholarship. What I tell parents is this: what I will guarantee is that I will help you put your child in the best position to earn a scholarship. Now, I cannot play the sport with them, for them, et cetera. I will again use my connections. I will use the power of persuasion to the best that I can. But your child must be able to do whatever it is that particular school needs. So, but the positioning will be there. And again, that connection will be there as well. So that's one thing they often ask. They'll ask things around, will I help their child get into a specific program? And I could say pretty much, yes, I will. I will assist you in getting your child in a specific program if your child meets the qualifications of that program. We will do our diligence around getting background information on your child. Again, it's about managing expectations. And sometimes as parents, we don't always have the information or the latest and greatest details on how our child is being perceived in that space. And so what we do is utilize some of our connections to be able to peel that back and find out what the streets are saying about your kid. Okay. And maybe sometimes they haven't told you about it because maybe it's you as the parent that is a contributor of some of the challenges your child is facing. So we get questions around that. We get questions around, do you think you're going to be able to help my child get more playing time because his coach is not playing him, et cetera, et cetera. What I will say, even to those things, we do our due diligence to make contact with those individuals that are working with your child, and to the degree that is necessary, we have very, I would say, candid conversations with the administrators that we deal with, be it a coach or a school administrator, et cetera, so that we can make sure we know exactly what to put into that ISAP. We're not going to put a goal, just like we wouldn't put a goal in an IEP for a student who needs specially designed instruction to be successful. I'm not going to put a goal in there that is something that's not attainable. Now, will the child have to stretch to get there? Absolutely. But we're not putting anything that's impossible. As a principal, when I would talk to my students, I would have an assembly every year and we would talk about goals and what they wanted to be. And I was an elementary school principal. I taught high school. I was an elementary school principal. And whether I was in my elementary school or in my high school classroom, when I asked students what they wanted to be, at least 70% of the boys not all of the girls, but of the boys would say they wanted to be in the NBA or NFL. 70%, be it 9th or 10th grade or second. Okay. So I am not the one to tell someone that you cannot. You know why? Because my son told me in second grade he wanted to go to the NBA. And guess what? He plays for the Los Angeles Lakers today. So I didn't know then, obviously, that was going to be his path, but I was going to do everything in my power to position him to be able to do that. And I was able to do so. So the kinds of questions that parents have for me are similar to questions that I had about playing time, about which program, this is huge, which program or which school my child should go to. So we actually have a process that we take families through, that we help them to make that decision. If that's the only thing you had to decide, that's one separate strand of our program. We will help you do that, because there are a lot of things you need to peel back to determine whether or not to put your child on a particular program. So there's lots of things. It runs the gamut, but we're here to help, whatever the questions are, because we get it. We've been there.
Yeah, so I think that's a question that I see a lot, is what either AAU program or what high school program should I go to, or should my child attend? If we could peel that back just a little bit, what are some of the questions that people should consider as they're navigating that process, that decision?
Well, one of the things, we're always going to focus on development, because your kid has to get better every year, no matter what. Your child has to get better than he was yesterday, not to someone else, but we're always talking about how that child develops. So we're always having conversations around development. We're also having conversations around exposure and opportunity that the student athlete will have in that particular program. So that requires a lot of time, some research. We might have to make some phone calls, those kinds of things. So we go through a whole process. And again, it's very individualized, because every athlete is different. And you never know what's on the street. The words on the street really do make a difference, because it's a very connected system, just like the school system is. So anytime you think that you're off on this one end, doing this and no one's going to know, or, it's not true. They all talk. So it's very important that we make strategic decisions, and it's helpful to have some guidance from someone who's been down that path.
Mm-hmm. So then where do you see a lot of families falling short when navigating these different processes?
I mean, I would honestly say the biggest challenge that most parents have is not knowing what they don't know, which is so impossible to
Yeah.
actually navigate, right? Oh, great. Now I'm going to be that's great. Now that means I won't ever get this. But seriously, that is the challenge. Um, that is why something like Empowered is so important. It's not the only program. There are other programs, and all I'm saying is get help and advice from folks who have been where you want to go. Um, so that's the biggest challenge is just not knowing. Some of them are blinded by their own aspirations. That sometimes again it takes another set of eyes to be able to help them to see a different perspective and to maybe reframe the situation, whatever that is. Sometimes we have to be point blank that it's not happening. It's not happening. Your son does not even like the game.
Hmm.
Whatever. Like we've had to have those conversations, like seriously. And they're like, no, he's, I'm like, sir, with all due respect, he does not like the game. We've had a separate conversation. He does not want to play. He's playing because he has to play, because you are making him. Those kinds of things. Sometimes that's the end result. But I would rather learn that in seventh or eighth grade than having spent thousands of dollars and hours on trainers and this, that, and the other travels to find out in 11th grade that he quits when he really is. He just turns 18 in eighth grade or whatever, and he decides, I'm not even playing anymore. I hate baseball or I hate basketball or football or whatever. So we do have that. So there's that, getting folks out of their own way. What other things are there? Sometimes I think parents are either not involved enough to know what's going on. Like it's not like they just don't know. They don't know what's going on. So they don't really fully understand that, hey, your child might have this opportunity to really take advantage of something that could be incredible, or the opposite end of that, all kinds of things. So we're navigating those things, but again, it requires oftentimes an outside look, and that's a lot of times what's missing.
Part of me thinks that this conversation might open more question marks than close the loop, right? But I think that goes back to something you just said of not knowing what you don't know. And so if somebody is listening to this and they're feeling overwhelmed, or maybe they're in middle school or in high school and they're feeling like, oh my gosh, we're so behind, what advice would you give them, or what would you say to that person?
I would say start now. You can't beat yourself up about yesterday because it's over. You can't get it. But if you recognize that right now you have questions, start to ask the questions. Just ask. I mean, I'm here. I created this company literally because I know the questions that you have. I understand the emotional turmoil that we go through as parents along every step of the journey that our children go through. If it's, that they're playing the sport, if there's an injury, if there's an aspiration toward the sport, except we live the entire thing with them. We are just as afraid. Listen, to this day, I got to put my headphones on and turn on my worship music at those games because I am stressed like a mug. Okay, let me be clear. I don't care how good they are. It is real. I get it as a mom. And if your child gets hurt or something like that, there's just so much that goes into it. So I would say start now. And it's one of those things we offer a free, absolutely free consultation. You got questions? Call. Go to help me help my baller. That's it. That's what our help me help my baller.com and fill out the paperwork. It's like a little quiz there. I have a little master class, a little 15-minute master class, talked about some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen baller parents make along their journey. So if you can get out in front, get the information now so that you don't have to play catch up or don't have to be like feeling like you're in that spot, like, oh, I don't know what to do. Because I get it. You're not going to know what to do until guess what? Until you find out what it is. Then you know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to also double down on it's not too late, right?
Never.
and you can't beat yourself up over something that you didn't know. But yeah, I just think being proactive and seeking information is important, and not relying on other people for information. Because what I see a lot is people thinking that their high school coach or their AAU coach is the one who's going to drive this process, and that one, that's a lot to ask somebody who's most likely volunteering or getting paid nothing and has a full-time job somewhere else. And two, they might just not have the experience or the knowledge or just the capacity to help in this type of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's those kinds of nuances that are really important because you do have to have someone that's pushing the needle, right? And who is more invested in that than you as a parent? That's why we specifically target parents. We realized early on the competitive advantage our children had. They had a competitive edge because of us, literally, because we were there, because we knew what was going on, because we knew all the movers and shakers, and because we asked the questions. Because, like I said, the landscape had changed so much since my husband had played, decades earlier. Like it wasn't even the same thing. So we had to ask questions. We had to pay attention as we were going along. We had to take advantage of opportunities. I'm gonna be honest with you, we had to invest. We had to invest. I promise you, we spent easily a salary over the years in terms of travel and tournaments and food and trainers and psychologists and all these things. Like it was all a part of it, and I wouldn't change any of it because it all costs. You know what I mean? Even free costs. It costs you something, some time, anything, something. So I say all this to say, like, I highly encourage parents to, learn as much as you could possibly learn. When I learned that Cameron was on the trajectory to be a pro, we didn't know what that meant. Like, how could we know what that meant? So I had to go back to school to study to be an agent. I didn't want to represent him. I knew developmentally, I knew how our personalities are. Yeah, that would work. He didn't want me to tell him what to do all the time. So I knew that wasn't going to work, but I did want to be able to sit at the table and make sure that whomever we hired to do this job was doing the most effective thing. I couldn't know that unless I knew what they were considering. So I had to go and get that education. Read, look stuff up. When you say don't talk to other people, it's funny you should say that. I mean, don't just go by what other people say because everybody's situation is different. I even struggle even like with reviews sometimes if I'm like picking a hotel or something, because someone gets a 1 star at this hotel. They were awful. They were awful. They were awful because your credit card didn't work and they didn't let you rent the room or what, you know what I mean? Like that's not my situation and circumstance. And so it's helpful to be able to look at things specifically from where you are, because it may not be the situation for you. I have my credit card. I'll be perfectly fine at that hotel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. And it just made me think of when I'm looking at a hotel or an Airbnb, the only things that I really care about is, are there negative things about cleanliness or just things like that? Because I'm like, that's something that I just can't deal with. I don't care if it's
Exactly.
small or whatever, as long as it's clean and I feel safe, then we're good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know how like like there might be a team or oh, don't go to that team because coach such and such, he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do such and such. He doesn't even play freshmen and da da da. No, he didn't play your freshman because your freshman wasn't good enough. But maybe my freshman is. And you know what I mean? Those kinds of things. So that
Mm-hmm.
you have to be careful because they formulate opinions, especially when things don't go their way, or sometimes people just make a blanket out of something like, this was no for me, so it's no for everyone. And that may not be the case.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that makes it harder too, right? Because now now
That's
you're
right.
trying to now you have to actually, but I think it could be as easy as just making a couple extra phone calls, like you said.
Absolutely.
Just doing a little bit of due diligence
Yeah,
and trying to get a full picture instead of a snapshot of one moment in time or something like that.
absolutely.
Last couple questions. So what book or podcast would you recommend every basketball parent or athlete read, and why?
Well, a shameless
Other
plug.
other than your
Other than
book,
alley oop, okay, other
other
than
than
alley oop,
alley which I will put like a link to that and stuff in the
yeah,
notes and all of that because it sounds like will help a lot of parents. So
Yes, but one book that really helped me, I told you I didn't play basketball, but I did support my children all along the journey and all that stuff. There was a book. I know y'all gonna say, now she's just old, okay? Walt Frazier's The Game Within a Game. I got such perspective from his book. He talks about, he talks about the fact that there is a game within the game. There is a system that you are a part of. He talks about how the different ways that players back in his day approached the games and the competition versus the way that our current climate is of athletes. There's a lot of friendly relationships that he said would never have happened back in the day. Like you were my rival on and off the court. But now, we're doing a podcast together, those kinds of things, So definitely, again, the landscape has changed. But that book, especially if you're a parent who just, you don't really quite understand the dynamics for the actual player. Maybe you didn't play that sport. Like I didn't play it for my children. I didn't really understand the extent of pressure that they endure on a regular basis that, as Cameron shared with me, just our very presence brings about. Wasn't even that we were saying or doing something, but every child aspires to make their parents proud. And so there is, along with that, pressure that comes along with it, and things like that. So he talks a good, The Game Within a Game, good book. He was a phenomenal player and everything, but the book really teaches you the ins and outs of the game. So I was happy to learn some of the business aspects before we actually got to the place where basketball was a business for us, but also teaching even just the fundamentals of the game. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're one of those parents who are so invested in your child being successful at their sport that you sucked the fun out of it. Like, that's real. You have to be very, very careful because a lot of kids will quit the sport. They will quit the sport the second they have an opportunity. And then all that you have invested really does go down the drain because they decide they don't play anymore. So those kinds of things, or even that you don't recognize how what you do affects how your child is perceived. I mean, we have to do so much cleanup sometimes as Impoweredd for some of the things that the families have done that they didn't even realize was the impression that they left. We got to go clean that up, and it's all part of it. It's all part of it. But I would highly recommend The Game Within a Game.
yeah,
We could talk all day.
yeah. Well, speaking about sucking the fun out of it, I was having this conversation the other day about how even if you don't, and this conversation was specifically for younger girls and playing basketball, but even if you don't end up playing in high school or even in college, there's so much that can be gained from just engagement in a sport like that goes far beyond any of those things. So sometimes perspective, like we've talked about a little bit of what's really important and what are the actual goals here.
Yeah,
But
I just want to share this
yeah,
to your point. So in this is my second edition of Alley Oop. I had written the first version back in 2021. And one of the major differences between the second edition of Alley Oop to the first is that included in this book is some interviews. I got to do interviews with, of course, I interviewed my sons, which was a huge deal because I really wanted to know if what I think as a parent, like what I'm writing down and I'm giving this advice to parents, hey, do this, do that. What do the kids really think? What do they really want their parents to know? And I had the opportunity, I know you work a lot with females. I got the opportunity to interview one of a WNBA player and her sister who also played overseas. And it was incredible the insight that they shared around what they really wanted and how little it was about basketball. Yet they both went into that profession. But it's interesting to hear their insights. I promise you, there's so much that we can learn as parents from our kids. And one of the biggest issues one of the biggest lessons that I've learned that now that my children are adults and can express to me how they feel, they're one of the big things that Cameron said and Aaron said was just really taking the time to listen to your athlete. I'm not gonna lie. I just thought I was so busy preparing that I knew more than you. So you can tell me what you think, but this is what we're gonna do. And I regret that. That's one of my biggest regrets. Even though I tried to be as, democratic, we were voting on everything and all this. Now they tell me, no, we didn't really feel like we had a choice. Felt like we had to do everything that you said. So creating that space where your athlete feels that they're able to share with you how they're really feeling, I think will help you along the way, not just with your athletics, your child's athletics, but also with your relationship with them in life. Because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what all matters.
Yeah. And I'm not a parent, but I have parents, and I can imagine how powerful it would be to, even in the middle of a season or at the end of a season, just say, hey, how are you feeling about everything?
Yeah.
I mean, something as simple as that is just because I think people forget that they always have the right to change their mind. And that's hard to remember, I think, no matter how old you are, where you
Yeah.
are. But yeah, for sure. All
Yeah.
right, last thing. If parents and athletes could take away one key message from today, what would it be?
Well, I would say honestly, stay ready so you don't have to get ready when you should have been ready already. Seriously,
Yeah.
it really comes down to preparation. What separates the good from the great is that the great knew to do more. They knew what to do and did more of it. That's what separates. And a lot of times, we can get behind the eight ball and there's just too much for us to catch up on. So get the information now. It's not too late. It's not too late. Start doing your research wherever you are. Start doing your research. Find out what you need to do, where your child is. Find out where your child actually is right now. How about that? Hello. Because a lot of times there's such a disconnect. They don't know. So that's what I would say. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And then also and I shared this earlier, honestly, there is no better investment that you can make than in your children. It's the only investment that we know will pay dividends over and over and over as your children progress, whether they're on a team or not. They're learning lessons. There's just so much. They're learning how to work with people, how to communicate, how to be a team. There's just so much that goes along into playing a team sport. That's so much of value.
Mm-hmm.
I would say get all the information you can now so you can make sure your kids can get everything that they have that God has for them in their sport and in their life.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Is there I will put the link to your book in the notes. Is there anything else you want to tell people about what's going on with you all, or how can people get in touch with you?
Yes, I would love for everyone to go to helpmehelpmyballer.com. In that way, if you go to helpmehelpmyballer.com, you're able to get my book, you're able to get your free conversation with me just to talk about your child and your child's journey and whatever questions you have. And I may not be the person who can give you all the answers, but I know a lot of people. So whether you're in fifth grade going all the way up, I am here to be a resource. I want to support you and help your child's hoop dreams or whatever dreams that they have come true. And the first place to start with that is helpmehelpmyballer.com.
Love it. All right, Dr. Z, I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening. If you aren't already, I would highly recommend subscribing to the podcast so you can get updated once new episodes are dropped. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and leave a review. It really helps spread the word to more athletes, parents, and coaches. Now, if you have any questions for myself or future guests, feedback, or you're curious on how we can work together to help you reach your basketball goals, let's have a conversation. Feel free to email me at l@hoopsthroughlife.com today to set that up. That's EL@HOOPSTHROUGHLIFE.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.